But that is super cool. Super, super cool. Let's also check out the talk from Chris
I
Metzen
didn't
on
think
the World Soul
Zerglings,
Saga.
morphing into orcs would work, but
No, I didn't either.
it's been a privilege working on Zergorks.
Hi, I'm Scott Johnson, the host of the World of Warcraft
Get out of here,
podcast, The
YouTube.
Instance, and today I'm sitting here with Chris Metzen. Chris,
Scott, it's good to see you, man.
good to see you. How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. You know, it's a crazy time. We're about to launch the War Within and,
Uh-huh.
really kick off this massive World Soul Saga.
Buff
Which is
rogues!
a trip because, I haven't shipped a video game in, 8 or 9 years. So it's kind of wild going through this process again. And
I bet, no,
just
honestly,
kind of
it
feeling
probably is
that
a crazy,
anticipation, excited
like,
to see what people
returning
think
to the
and
river
when
you
the
used
product finally
to,
gets
to
into
like,
people's
walk in
hands.
every day.
It's one of my favorite parts of the whole development process.
Well, let me ask you this question because you reminded me of how long this has been going. I remember firing up the World
Makes me
of
wonder,
Warcraft,
is, like,
OG.
he gonna be
vanilla
here
World
for
of
the whole
Warcraft, and seeing the
saga?
trailer
I'm wondering
that
if
said,
they've hired him through, like,
celebrating
a
10
long
years
kind
of
of
Warcraft.
contract.
And I remember then thinking, you got to be kidding me. That's insane. That's how long I've been playing these games. And now we're 20 years on top of that, 30 years total. That has to be a little overwhelming, especially given that you were here for most of that, had a bit of a break. Now you're back. Does that weigh on you? Do you feel the heat from the time? Like, how do you feel about how that entire process has gone?
I don't feel kind of heat or
He's
like
asking if
the
he's, like,
weight of time,
worn.
relative to expectation. It's really
They're
weird.
bringing him
Being
back to save the
little
game.
older, little wiser. Feels like
Finally, the
100 years
voice
ago,
acting
feels
for
like 5
Thrall
minutes
is
ago,
gonna be
all
good
at the same
again.
time. So when I look at this World Soul Saga, the stuff we're building right now, thankfully there's an immediacy of it all to me. It's just we live and die by how good
I'm not
the
gonna
things
lie,
are
I
sculpted
definitely have
in real
enjoyed the
time
game
is.
when
Trying to
Chris
hold it
Metzen
all
was
in
on
your
the
head, the
team.
weight of the past.
I don't remember if he was a part
it's
of
kind
Legion.
beyond me. I can't really wrap my head around like all the history.
Whoever
all at
was working
once.
on the game
I mean,
during
there's
Legion,
kids graduating
can we get
college
them
right
back?
now named Jaina
Yeah.
and Anduin. It's like, what?
Can I just have like
I
another
often
Legion?
find it's not
Just
all
one more
that helpful
expansion
to
like Legion.
overdwell on,
I'll be out of your hair
in the course
forever.
of development. You want to keep it focused on what you're doing at the time. So that's how I try and balance it out. One day I'm sure I'll look back and go, wow. Working on this game again has really given me more of an
What a beautiful-
immediate sense of gratification that just kind of keeps you
Beautiful
focused in the
game.
moment. And that's generally, where my head is at on a day-to-day basis.
When you mentioned people naming their kids after characters that you created, that you named, and that you developed and saw grow and evolve and everything. Something that's interesting about
I named my baby
War
boy
Within so
Thrall
far, to me, is we're seeing the gang kind of
'cause he's
back
ugly
together
like
in
an
a much
orc.
more, complete way. So you're seeing Anduin talking to Thrall with Jaina nearby, and Khadgar, my favorite worst wizard of all time, but I love him. He's there. They're all there.
Yeah.
And what that tells me is that we're in for some coming together of a lot of strings, a lot of stuff that has been out there for 20 years that will finally converge in some meaningful ways. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
I'll break it down. When I came back, I'm like, all
Uh-oh.
right,
Mic drop.
let's go. World of Warcraft. Like, what do we got? What are we making? And they were in, they had already been doing War Within, or what would become, War Within, for about 10 months. While I liked what they were building and thought it was a cool next chapter in WoW, in my head, I'm like, for the 20th anniversary of WoW, like, I want to have a feeling, like, whatever the product becomes, I want to have a feeling of pulling all the toys out of the toy box, right? They like older characters, the kind of macro themes that, the series has been about all these years, Titans, Old Gods, Light and Dark. I wanted to feel like the anniversary was capturing, like this kind of mix of all of the core flavors, and ultimately proofing out that there has been this storyline all the way through, that everything kind of converges into this crescendo. And in a very real way, how the War Within was shaping up, they're like,
If
yeah,
he can pull it off,
there's
like,
no way it
bravo.
works, right? That,
I mean,
that's
I
gonna
don't know
divert
the,
course of Mighty Rivers. There's
depths
no way
of
to
his
get this
WoW
done
lore knowledge,
on
and
top of what we're already in production on. So
I
that
mean,
begat
in all
this
honesty,
idea
I didn't really get the
of
vibe of
larger
like anything
saga.
was
I'm like,
being
okay,
wrapped
well,
up
what
in
if we can
Season of
get there
Discovery
in X number of
lore-wise.
steps?
At
What if we can build to something
least not
just
yet.
ridiculous, but it might take a couple expansions to do. And somehow folks, bought in on it. Like, whoa, that's wild. Let's go. And so Taryn Gregory and I, Taryn's our principal story developer. So we work together every day, and we talk a lot about like we want to involve all these epic characters, but like when they're in the scene, they eat all the oxygen, and they could just go off and solve for X. So it's this balance between including all these mega characters and then finding clever ways to get them out of the way, so that the player has maximum agency and the newer characters we're introducing have space to breathe and live.
It sounds like it is almost an advantage to come to something that had already been started. If you'd come to the end of Dragonflight and started from there, that's a little big. It's a bigger buy. It's like, well, wait a minute, where are we going now? We've been flying. Okay, what does that mean? What do we do? And instead, you were presented with some beginnings, and then you got to decide where those beginnings took you.
And vector it a little bit. The trick to, after all these years, creative direction, which even today, I don't know that I could do a thesis on, right? Creative direction is as unique as the person doing it and the chemistry of the team that you're working with. But kind of finding that balance again of having strong ideas and kind of saying like, I want to go this way, right? But the team had already been, kind of constructing this thing. So it's a mix of maximizing kind of the things that they are most passionate about, the ideas that they're kind of dug in on, and finding a way to bend everything towards a singular purpose, but boosting
What is being said?
sense of ownership.
So when you got up on stage at BlizzCon, it was pretty magical for players. I can say that for myself, and a lot of people that I know, and a lot of fans of the game saw this as a return to something. And I think we're coming off an excellent expansion in Dragonflight.
He's not wrong. Dragonflight has been very well received, and everyone does love to see Chris Metzen.
Normal, here comes the next expansion, here are the features, here's the storyline in its basic way. We are going to do a trilogy of essentially games. You spoke a lot about bringing, tying up some loose ends, but also creating a saga that is 3 parts, at least, and setting up really the next 20 years of the game, perhaps. That's very different than what any of you have done up to this point. Mm-hmm. Did that present unique challenges to the way you wanted to create story, the way you wanted your characters to progress, these sorts of things?
Yeah, it created all sorts of complexities. Under the hood a little bit, it's interesting in how when I came back on the team, the development process and even the conceptualizing process, like where does the expansion take place? What are the main
Holy frame rate, Batman!
Really had become much more
oh my God,
democratized, right? And people were, had kind of found their voice in the balance of all the special teams that comprise the World of Warcraft team. They'd really built the vision of Dragonflight together. So as I came back in, woohoo, and there were folks going like, oh wow, how is this going to change our dynamic? In terms of being a creative director, like will we still have a voice? Will we still have stakes in how this all shapes out? So, like I was saying earlier, kind of learning that again and learning that balance again, and coming in as creative director and be like, no, I'm not here to be hyper prescriptive with everything as I might have been as a younger dude, but like really listening for the team's instincts. Like what are they responding to? What do they want to build? What do the artists want to make? What are they imagining in terms of that pure vision?
Okay,
so
I'm behind this. Okay, finally,
the
some substance.
complexity of, I don't think this gives up the ghost on anything. Like we're building 3 of these at a time. This is, I'll say it. It's insane. It's insane, right? On top of the team, over a year ago, having committed to like an 8-week cadence. Yeah. So these folks we are moving so fast, and so the difference here is, guys like Taryn and I have to map out where we're going like way ahead of the caravan, which is its own really interesting kind of work, right? Checking in with everybody. Does this feel cool? Everybody hip? I want to make sure that we're building things that, not only, again, my instinct feels are cool and fun, but that the team is proud to build and that they feel they have a voice.
Sounds like they're treading like a lot of new territory with the new
where the story's going, what the ideas are. We're already mapping out
schedule system, like, it no longer being just a single expansion being announced, it's a saga, and they're working like all of these things at the same time.
It's wild, but in a way, you get to step back and see a far
and he's just
more
explaining his
vision,
experience being at the helm. And how that stacks up to what the company used to be like before.
And without, you know,
I
again,
think I
without,
got
you
a
know, spilling
better
any beans, it's
perspective on
like,
what the interview is about
you know,
now.
we're already talking about, you know, the next
What's
few,
next?
you know, post, you know, upwards of like 17. And it's just keeping the conveyor belt going. You know, it's like we're loud and clear. You know, the fans want more content. You know, more regularly. So,
Don't forget
in a
to
way,
subscribe,
just
chat.
staying ahead of that curve
Sign in.
and
Oh,
making sure that
I'm on the wrong
everything
browser.
again is of purpose and telling this much longer story. It's been a blast. You know, the creative, the pure creative on Warcraft, you know, for the past year and a half has been, how would I put it, over such a long span of time. I want to say it's one of the most nuclear creative phases I've seen for Warcraft. But the pace is wild, right? Like the pace is wild, and it's like I ain't 30
Nuclear
anymore,
creative
so we joke around all
phases.
the time, like,
What is
you
that?
know, we need to
Is there
start
like a
instituting, you know, company naps in the middle of the
footnote somewhere?
afternoon for the old folks. But it has been
Where
pretty
are our
amazing.
citations
That's a
at?
great way of thinking about it. Speaking of personal connections to characters and story, somebody close to you, who I think is a very wise human, once said, online somewhere, that Chris is Anduin in some ways, kind of worn out, beaten up by a straight period of like nonstop work, right?
Okay, so now we're
But
getting into
also on the
story
other end of it, he's a little bit back to being Thrall
and
again.
character
And
arc,
those
I
two
guess.
characters represent these two parts of who this person is. How much of these characters moving forward or even in the past have represented you where you were in your life? Like some people say, well, the early versions of these characters are they were so metal. Like even Tauren chieftains, they look like, you know, these metal dudes and everything. And now they're aging, right? They're maturing. They're moving on in the world. Like you are, like everyone who's worked on this does. Like that's time. Do you think that's a fair thing to say, that we'll see these characters change and evolve in the same way that maybe you have, and that they're kind of your avatars?
Yeah, no, I know where you're going. So there's kind of an A and a B there. Like the B, which is easier, is
Why is he doing
certainly
that?
we want to push these characters forward. We want to show some aging. We are currently doing that. But yeah, we talk about that a lot. There are many new characters over the arc of the saga that we don't want to be just one-off. We want them to be, you know, pals and you know, working together to, you know, solve these big problems. But certainly the characters that have been around a while, we're
Couldn't he
trying
have framed
to
that question
kind
like a
of
better
find a
way?
way
Is
to,
like
capture
you
that
and your
age up,
team
not
have?
necessarily
Like I feel
age
like
out,
he
but
heavily
like,
insinuated
okay,
there,
so in
like,
that cinematic at BlizzCon, you know,
haha,
they went in
you
and
are
put,
Green
like, gray
Jesus,
streaks and Thrall's hair, like,
and
oh,
I don't know.
it got me. It's like, whoa. And just Anduin, you know, staring you down. It's like our little boys all grows up. You know, it's
You feel for him. You're supposed to feel for him, right?
which was the point. But just the idea that these characters
I
are
don't know.
moving through their own
I feel like the question
continuum,
could have been framed in
and
a less.
progressing and moving through stuff. Like, what a trip! You know, looking back from where we started. To the point where these are, you know, fairly fully
Direct
realized
way?
characters
I don't know.
within this setting, and it's just incredibly satisfying that way to see that progression. And certainly us as storytellers, as people, you know, as we, you know, it's not necessarily, it is certainly getting older, but it's also just experience over time. You know, big life moments, becoming parents, you know, finding love, finding your career, all these big kind of life, you know, hurdles. It's like, you know, I tell folks all the time, like, don't be afraid to pour yourself into this stuff. You know, even when you're like, oh God, will the people down the hall dig it? You know, will I be judged? Like, yes, probably. But the answer is you're an artist. Go get it, right? Find your truth. Because often when, you know, we're pulling from a place of like deeply personal experience, someone's going to feel that on the other end of the line. You know, as you're playing the game, it's like some of those themes that really matter. Whether you're a writer, quest designer, narrative folks, cinematics, you know, like the game design, you know, like everyone kind of pours themselves into their craft. And the more genuine that is, and I think sometimes the more risk you take, I think you get more genuinely affecting content. I think people feel that, they feel you in it one way or another. There are many themes embedded in the World Soul Saga, evidenced by different characters, that are very pointedly things that I think today, or I'm struggling with today, for sure. But again, I think about it in terms of like, as the team's, you know, creative leader, that's not the job as much.
You think he's got what it
Often,
takes?
I think the job is like trying to learn to call
I
them
currently
out,
can't
you know,
think
and
of
challenge them to kind of breathe their own
anyone else that
experience
I would
into
like
it,
want at the helm.
as opposed to pouring my own in. So it's
I
a
know
balance.
I assume that's what
Ian
over time,
Hazacostas
you have a character. Let's
like
say
meant well,
Charles
and he
Mendez,
understands the
probably
game in a
most
very like
well-known
deep
of
way.
the Chris Metzen, and certainly voice him. So
Until
people
they
didn't
find
know
somebody
that.
better,
Until they find
you know.
somebody better.
But I can't
Maybe
say
we'll
I've
reject
really
We're getting there.
enjoyed a lot of
But
what
no,
World of Warcraft
that, you've
was
breathed
under
enough
him.
life into that character and given him enough direction over so much time that
But I also
that
don't
have
know
to
how
think
much
that in
power
a
he
lot of
was
cases
given,
you start to run your
because
own
I
course.
mean,
And
Bobby
while I'm
Kotick
not asking you to tell me if
was
there's any tragedy
there the
coming at
whole
all.
time
I'm
as
not
well,
even
right?
suggesting
And
anything.
we've
I have
all
I have a
come to
tier list.
understand how
Do
much
you?
of a
Got,
pain
like,
he
top
was for
12
the
characters,
company.
like they're all going.
Why is Khadgar at the top of the list?
I don't know, right? Like
Can't
I'm a
result.
layman and I don't
There's
really
no
have a
choice.
full
Alright, good.
picture or
You
understanding
know
of
what I mean?
everything
You,
that
you
like
might
was going
find
on at the
yourself
company.
going, well,
So I don't want to like
time for it.
put too much
Character
blame
X
on
to take
Ian, or
care
really
of
like
that.
give too much credit
It's,
to
you know,
Mr.
so
Metzen
there's
here,
no,
because
I'm kidding, there's no kill list.
like he's saying here,
necessarily.
it's a whole
But
team.
we
It's
do
how
talk
he
about this
meshes
stuff
with the
all
team,
time. And the only, when you
how
start
the
talking about
work culture
knocking out the
allows
main
them to
characters,
breathe as artists.
it's not a small thing. And
It's all
usually
connected,
that is in
and
service to in the general story you're
you know,
developing. If you
all we can really
need to
hope from
punctuate,
at the end of the day is that,
stakes, the easiest
albeit
thing to
they're a
do
company,
is ask Lucas blow up a planet.
the artistry has
or,
got to come
you know,
first.
knock off a main character.
Tyrion Fordling.
You know,
Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
the craftsman
I do. I'm still gripping on that one.
at the ground level,
That was rough.
building this thing by brick by
No
brick,
pressure, though. I'm just saying it was a rough moment.
need
No pressure.
to
You know,
have
so we do talk about it
enough
from time to
freedom
time,
to
but
make
we
creative
try and
decisions
frame
that
it
they
with,
know
you
are
the
going
greatest
to
gravity possible, and trying
make
to
the
be clear that,
game more appealing
this
to a wider
franchise
audience.
has another 20 years in it.
Because
it's this big ongoing idea,
if
and losing
they
critical
keep
characters is costly. So it's, we talk
trying
about
to
it from time
squeeze
time.
blood from a
I
stone,
won't tell you we won't lose anybody over the arc of the saga. Those types of moments are
Blizzard's
all
not going to
about
have any
establishing
reputation left to stand on.
stakes and that emotional,
That's my opinion. I don't.
engagement
I
from
maybe
the
I'm like
player ultimately.
speaking
So,
a little too
you know,
loosely,
Does
but
it help populate the World Soul Saga as a creative place to know that
I
over
really
the last
think,
few years, while you were gone for much of it,
they've got to
the
like
team
flex their
has
muscles
made a
and
real
show
effort or
that
a
this game is
priority out of
more
having allied races
than just
discovered in the world
riding
that
your
players can
mount,
not only unlock, but then be
doing dungeons,
might prefer
showing
over
up for
the
raid
originals or
every week,
whatever. Like this additional
and
diversity for choice
right? Like
seems like a really
this
potent
game needs to be a
way
social
to fill your world
experience.
with more
And
interesting characterization rather than just
there
well,
needs
it's
to
orcs and
be
humans and a few others.
Yeah.
Many
I love
facets
it.
to
Just
experience
old
it,
school
not
D&D
just
and
a
all
few
these
or a
options
handful.
on, player expression, what kind of,
Enough with the
what culture you
terrible
wanna be from.
ad
I
nauseum
love
on
that kind of
repeat,
stuff. So opening that up, especially like Battle for Azeroth,
holiday
the inclusion
associated
of all these new
events.
silhouettes and flavors or whatever, I thought was awesome.
Give us
actually. And even the ones I didn't think I would play, I wound
something
up,
fresh.
rolled
Give
a
us
Volpera
Yeah.
hunter, and then I
don't
consistently
know,
dress him
right?
like Robin Hood from the old Disney movie. So
look
it's
at
like,
look
I-
at your
I
peers.
actually really dig a lot of the flavors that
And
over time. Like it's in my opinion,
Ask,
the water's warm.
what can
Everybody
we
in the
learn
pool,
from them?
I think WoW can stretch and grow to encapsulate all of these flavors. I think given
My greatest
players
dream
more
is
options, more
for
visual options, it's
one,
awesome. At the end of the day,
World of
I think,
Warcraft
erring on the
specializations to
side
be
of, player choice, player agency is the right move. Like why you're playing this game in the first place.
enlarged.
When you
And what I mean by
especially
that
when it's your
is
character, when you
let
imprint
the
on a
imagination
look
run
or a
free.
vibe or like a vision that you
warrior
connect with,
healers
it's
that
like,
like
get it.
use
So
battle
let's bring it
shouts
full circle
to buff
to
their
what
teammates
is
and
imminent,
stuff,
which is the war within.
yell at them to heal them.
Players have a lot of
Rogue
expectations.
healers that
Some of it
can
is
no
based
longer
on
do
just
damage, but
excitement because there is
stab
a
and stun,
three-part saga
put their
coming. They're
teammates
not
on the
used to that. It's a
operating
whole new
table
structure
table
to
as
it.
a
So
surgeon
what would you say to players who
and heal them. Like
pins
really
and needles
creative
about this
stuff.
next
They need to be
expansion,
more
the start of
creative.
the
They need
big
to be
grand
less serious.
story?
As we
No
were talking about
more,
earlier,
oh
we've
god, we
never
only
been
care
in a
about world
situation where
first,
we've
or
shipped the
top end
whole
PvP
giddy
stuff.
up,
Like that stuff can exist, and
all
it's
at
gonna
once.
exist no
So
matter
there's
what.
the adventure component of the war
but
within, and then there's the max level campaign, and there's the subsequent
they need to
patches.
look at
And it's
professions
all been designed
in an
to
entirely
kinda
new
play
way.
out over
Like,
time.
just look
Your
at what
narrative
RuneScape
threads and
does.
sinews kinda,
Look at what
linking
professions
everything
are.
together.
There's so many different
It's-
mini games. They could have
Personally, I'm
dungeons
biased,
that
but
are
I think
tied
it's
to
off the
classes.
hook,
You want to
right?
do this
At
dungeon?
the
Well,
end
you
of
got
the
to be a
day,
rogue because it's
I
going to
would want
require
people to
stealth, or it's
remember
going
it
to
is
require
still
you being
only,
a
however,
druid.
part one
And that may sound
of
stupid,
a
but
much,
if there's a
much
dungeon for
larger
priests,
narrative.
and you have to go and do priest's things,
and I
go
would
and do
want
that
people
dungeon.
to look
Imagine
at
how
it that way.
flavorful
You know,
that is.
it's
You have to do
meant
rogue things to
rise
do this
and,
rogue dungeon. You have to do
crescendo with
warrior
its
things to
own
do this
natural
warrior dungeon.
campaign.
And it's like you're
We are
working
Will
together
I be
as
expected
warriors,
to walk
and you're
into
in a
Quest 1
community
and
of
yank the
warriors, and you all
sword from
get
the
each other,
planet?
Oh,
right? Like,
that's an
I
interesting
don't know.
one.
I'm not gonna
I
say
would
that's
say
like a
that.
permanent
I'm glad
solution.
you
I'm
brought
not
that
gonna
up.
say
Actually, the sword,
like
the
weird,
resolution of the
quirky new
sword
specs
that we
are
started with it was
the end
fine.
all be all savior
Actually,
of
that's
what
a
modern World of
13
Warcraft
thing.
is, but I
We're
think
gonna
it's
build to
overdue
that.
that,
Oh,
you know,
it's a doozy.
One
some
does
of
not
these more
simply yank a
flavorful
sword
ideas,
forever.
like
I
rogue
would
healer,
even
like
say
warrior healer,
you are not
like
prepared
mage tank
for that
or
moment.
rogue tank,
And
or
leave it at
some of the
that.
stuff that
But
they're
it is
trying
a
in SOD. I'm
13
super
issue.
excited about it. I just hope that
Ultimately,
they
you know,
really
things
run with it.
like
Um,
Xalatath, we've
because
been
I think
doing
that
a
is
lot of
like the
work trying
life
to
water
build her up.
of what is going to make WoW
Is a
great
very
again.
different kind of villain.
Um,
She is not like a
it's
Deathwing
experimenting
type, villain
and the
where
casualization,
he's flying and
right?
burning
What made
everything
WoW
and
great
you're
in the
like,
first
crap,
place?
we're gonna,
It is the
clearly he's-
simplification
or the storyline
of a
changes.
rather
She's built
complicated genre
in such a way that like we're gonna
before what was,
be
you know,
confronted
Guild
by her
Wars
and face her
and,
multiple
I mean,
times over the arc of the
Horizon
saga.
and other
So it's
extremely
not gonna be
archaic
this, you know, one and done type,
counterparts
like, oh, yeah,
of the
she's
same genre.
great
So,
balls. You know, she's meant to, you know, kind of weave in
yeah,
and out of
I don't
these
know.
at the
I
same
think
time. So that's something I would say. But definitely
all
the
of that
sword
stuff is
thing
relevant,
sticks
and
in
I
my
think what
head,
he's
you know,
talking
like
about is
certain of
relevant
these
too, like the
things
meshing of a
built
team
to
and
play out
such.
over time.
And I'm talking over a
So I
lot of
hope
what he's
people
saying right now
are
too, and I'm probably
into
like
that. I hope
ignoring
they're into, you know, a longer
some
form
important details.
because in a way, you know, so many of our expectations kind of, you know, crystallize around like, well, wait a minute, I didn't get the full meal I was expecting in 11.0. It's not built to be that. It's built to be part one. So buckle up. You know, the ride will be, I hope, insane and insanely fulfilling.
I'm ready for
Going
it.
back to that.
I'm
that
definitely
promise
here
of
for the
the
ride, right?
20th
Like,
anniversary of World of Warcraft. Like,
I love WoW,
I want this saga to feel like it.
and
is
I want
just
it to
the perfect
succeed.
crescendo of 20 years
Um,
of storytelling. You know, as we
I don't want the legacy
Yeah,
of this game to
there is a
be
sense that we are
some bad devs or
fulfilling
employees
something.
misbehaving or
20 years came
you know,
and will end this November.
not being able to
Yes,
learn from
November's
its
launched,
lessons
right?
or
Yeah,
holding
20-year
on to some of
anniversary
its
this
best parts
November.
and like always
And
wiping the board
there is a
completely and
feeling,
starting
I can
fresh
tell
every
you
time.
from the player
There's like a
side,
lot of things that could be said,
of
right?
really coming to something special. And I know that puts pressure on the team when players collectively have an idea that they think should happen, and then the team's like, well, we're kind of going a different way. But I don't know that I've felt this much positive feedback in a long time about
Positivity is
just
at an
where
all-time
things are
high.
headed. And nobody says that about a 20-year-old property.
I'm a
usually.
doomer, and
There's
even
not a lot of
I'm
precedent
feeling
to that,
optimistic.
right? Like, that's the same
I'm ready to
continuous
sink
thought.
my
You know,
teeth
playing
in.
a game, you know,
The only
I'm
thing
sure
that
it's
I'm
not
kind
just
of
on
like
you,
sad
but
about
like,
is that
it
some of
is
my main
honestly a
specs are
blessing and a, you know,
not
often,
really
sometimes,
feeling the
you know, it's
love,
just trying
like
to, you know,
Boomkin or
sift
Feral
through
or
the sheer
Rogue.
volume of all of these details.
But it's whatever, I'm
Portia and
right. Like,
Copeland, right? You know, just
you
trying
know,
to
the
keep
game
it all,
isn't
you know,
bad
make it all
just
make
because
sense.
my favorite specs
But
aren't
it
like
is also
top of the line.
its principal strength, you know, particularly because it's an MMO and a video game, because you've lived these moments. You didn't just passively watch. You didn't just, you know, read a book or watch a movie. You've lived these moments and they matter and there are stakes, you know, so as complex as it is to try and push the world forward without breaking everything that came before, which is its own kind of challenge. It's a very noble challenge, right? It's a privilege to tread water in this complexity of this setting. After all of these years, it's amazing that it's
He's
still
reveling
the
in
same
the
stakes.
opportunity.
It's still the same world that you've always known.
Well, there's a future I see where you're, you know, reclining in some sort of chair,
With the blanket over my
blanket
knees,
over your
sitting by a
knees,
fire,
keeping you warm, and you're looking back and you're thinking,
telling kids to stay off my
wow.
lawn. I
Yeah,
know, I
exactly.
know.
And they're all in their haptic suits playing whatever version of WoW they have, and looking back at Grandpa's accomplishments, and I think it looks like something to be pretty proud of already. Well, I, for one, could not be more excited about this next expansion and the entirety of the World Soul Saga, and I think you and your team should be proud, and I wish you guys nothing but luck in the next few
Yeah,
weeks.
I mean,
Thank you, sir.
what
Thanks
else
so
can
much,
be
Scott.
said, right?
It was good fun.
Everybody's excited. Positivity is at an all-time high. For me personally, what I think the game needs is whatever SOD has been doing, they need to do more of it, and they need to bring it to retail. There need to be rogue tanks. There need to be warrior healers that yell at their teammates to heal them, buff them up with all sorts of shout casting. There need to be, you know, rogue healers. Just crazy stuff. There need to be mage healers. Everything that SOD does ought to be in retail class dungeons, in my opinion. Blizzard, you can steal my idea. Feel free. Please just let there be a dungeon that only rogues can do, only warriors can do, only priests can do, so on and so forth, and let them be thematic. Let them require you to do things that only those classes can do. Give rewards that only those classes can use. Beyond that, look at your peers. Ask yourself, what do the other MMOs provide that we don't? And how can we offer that in a Blizzard way? I'm not going to say that you need to look at RuneScape and copy one for one to their profession system. I don't think anybody's asking for that in WoW. But what I am asking for is that why are there no dungeons associated with cooking? Why can't I queue in to a dungeon with a bunch of other chefs and, engage in like a cooking competition or an order blitz, right? Like we're all working at a restaurant all of a sudden in the middle of Stormwind or Orgrimmar, and we've got some high expectation customers or something like that, right? You've played those sorts of games before, whether it was like back on the original PlayStation or well, I mean, heck, there's even some on Steam these days where it's like a party game and there's a bunch of angry customers and you're all trying to like keep up with the orders as they come. I think that would be fun, right? Imagine you're doing a dungeon with a bunch of other leather workers, and there's like some rare beasts out in the Barrens, and you all spawn into this instance in the middle of the Barrens, and it's like an elaborate safari hunt or something. And at the end, you get a bunch of rare skinning loot. I don't know. Um, I like the idea of professions being more than just this thing that you do on the side to make some gold. I think they should provide a world. They should offer a looking glass into like what is this to Azeroth. Um, there could be an archaeology dungeon. There could be a mini game associated with basically any activity. That's why I like using RuneScape as a example because they do the mini game thing really well, and it provides depth to those professions. Um, Again, it's not a game for everybody, and just like World of Warcraft isn't a game for everybody, I think I think the best place to be is somewhere in the middle. So I really yearn for them to explore some of the things that the game is already kind of like implying, right? Like there are master chefs, there are master blacksmiths and things like that. So why can't we do anything once we've achieved those heights? Why can't we like have that space to play around in and fulfill those roles? I don't know if I'm getting it across perfectly, but those are some of the things that I think would really help World of Warcraft shine as its flavor, right? It's like peak flavor to engage in an activity and then reap the reward by going and doing something specifically tailored to your ability to do that. Um, and it's like you can almost imagine the communities forming around that activity, right? Like, oh, I wonder when like the next cooking dungeon is going to come out, or oh, I wonder whenever they're going to do like another rogue dungeon, or oh, I wonder whenever they're going to like buff rogue healers, or I wonder if like just seriously, every single one of those things that I just talked about, it could be an entire community, and all it takes is them entertaining the idea that it deserves to exist. So hopefully they will see this video. PoE noises in the background. Hopefully they see this video and give some of my ideas consideration because, food for thought. It's free. Anyways, I think that's it for reactions for now. See you guys in the next video. Peace out.